So the idea of Death Machine originally came from my childhood. The first book I ever read was The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. I think I was age 6 or 7, which is a little bit young, perhaps, but I read the book twice and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it really opened my brain up to the possibility of time travel and causality, and the concept that, time, or the past at least, was locked. So if you travel back in time and you do something like you take a gun and you try to kill Adolf Hitler, you can't do it because history has already taken place. And if you actually tried to shoot Adolf Hitler, the gun would malfunction, maybe blow up in your own face or something. And even that would be a matter of history as well. So I like the concept that people from the future would come back to the present time and basically be bound by causality. And so, for example, if somebody was meant to die on a certain day in a certain place, like for example, the Death Machine, the Erebus 7, he would actually be bound to kill that person because that person was meant to die on that day in that moment anyway. There was no choice, and it's really a curse for a time traveler to be bound by the fact that he has no real choices. That everything he does is a matter of history and was meant to be. I'm not a believer in destiny per se, but to a time traveler, destiny would, if you're traveling to the past, destiny would certainly play a major part in the decisions you make. So Death Machine came out of that concept. Originally it was called Chrononaut, but I think the term chrononaut, like astronaut, but a chronos, traveling through time, a chrononaut, the average person may not know what that is unless you're kind of a science geek like me. So we changed it to Death Machine to make it a little bit more accessible and user-friendly, so you get an idea of what's going on. But the heart of it is about a time traveler and his Achilles and his experiences traveling back in time, and how he had a very distinct role to play in history. The situation for me was, I was actually stranded in the UK. I'm originally British. I used to live in Australia for a time, but I was stranded in the UK for a short time period, and I was waiting for my dearest best friend Phil to get out of hospital. He'd gone to hospital, and I was waiting for him to get out of hospital so we could do a movie together. So we'd produced a couple of other movies in the past, and I was sitting there basically waiting for him, and then he passed away. And it was kind of a shock to everybody, myself especially, because he was very fit and healthy and full of life. And then one day he was gone. And it was really a heart-wrenching time for me. And then I was like a little bit lost. So I threw myself into making a movie, and I made Death Machine. I think originally I was scheduled to go back to the US and do a movie called Starship with Phil, but because of this situation, and obviously we had a funeral and everything else, I was in the UK for another couple of months. So I thought, while I'm here, to keep my mind off things, I'm going to make Death Machine. It had been a story I've been tossing around for a few years, and I kind of finished up the script very quickly and assembled a team of actors, and decided I'd try to make the movie. There was a lot of emotion in the script, I guess, and a lot of pain and torment, because I think it was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, was then to go speak at my friend's funeral and deliver the eulogy there in front of a lot of people. And it was just a heart-wrenching situation, and a very painful, a very emotional situation. It brought up emotions I didn't know existed in me. So from that, I just poured my heart and soul into the script. And I remember just speaking at his funeral, and just couldn't understand why he was dead and why he wasn't there, why he was meant to be there with me. He was meant to be by my side. We were meant to be doing this movie together. And the whole destiny thing just didn't vibe with me. It just seemed like life is random. And I wish there'd been a different way, that he'd survived and we'd done the film together, and we could have a really great time together, but that never came. I was numb. I was in pain. I was lost. And so the movie came. And strangely enough, I can look back now and say that Death Machine was probably the most enjoyable movie I've ever shot, because out of that pain and torment came this great creative work of art, I guess. And we didn't have a large crew or anything like that, so I guess it was all me, and I really was able to focus on the work. And I've done like 10 or 11 movies now, and this was by far the most enjoyable movie I've ever done. So it's kind of a strange dichotomy between the greatest pain I've ever felt and the greatest joy I ever had. So, I think Death Machine is something I'm always going to be proud of, and will always, be there as a great moment in my life. I thought I always wanted to shoot a film up in Yorkshire, in the north of England. So this would be the film, this would be the time. I moved up to Morley, which is a town my father was from, and there's a lot of my family members there. And I thought, we're going to shoot a film here and really have a good time with this, and really make something visually artistic. I had one of the actors, Darren Jacobs, who was in my other film, Starship Rising. I rang him up and said, look, I've got to delay Starship for a little bit before we shoot it. What are you doing the next few weeks, months? And he said, well, I'm actually coming to the UK. I said, well, do you want to be in Death Machine? And he said, of course. And I said, well, I need some actors. And he helped me find some other actors, Amy Pemberton and Richard Lawrence, and Alan, who played Achilles, Helen Soraya, who played Dedra. It was really sweet of him to sort of help me cast the movie from friends of his. And then I ran across a guy called Ben Treblecook, who he wrote one of the Diehards, and he was producing stuff here and there, and he kind of came on board and helped me produce the film. Also helped me find some other great actors in London as well. And then, of course, my other dear best friend, Blake Edgerton, who's worked on many movies with me, helped me produce the movie as well, and helped me, put together props and costumes and locations and everything else. So it was kind of a collaborative effort of a lot of nice people, and people I'd known for some time. So we kind of assembled this team, and I found a couple of great crew people in the north of England, and we started shooting the movie in London first. This was during the time of the Olympics, and I remember London was in this great lockdown at the time. There was police everywhere and helicopters and military things happening because the Olympics were about to happen, and they were always worried about terrorism and everything else, and a little bit of a dark shadow over the summer of 2012 in London. But it was it was very, very nice time. We shot in front of Big Ben. The police were actually very friendly to us. Nobody seemed to bother. We had to work with a small crew, of course, because the lockdown situation in London. There were like military people everywhere and snipers apparently in the buildings. We didn't want them to sort of look upon us as a threat or anything, so we did a very tiny crew shooting in front of Big Ben and stuff. And following that, we worked our way up into Yorkshire and got out into the moors. The Yorkshire moors are the most stunningly amazing tracts of empty land, and very ethereal and very atmospheric and mysterious. There's nobody out there hardly except a bunch of sheep. We shot out on the moors, and then we went back to Morley and shot a little bit around the town of Morley, which, as I said, it's kind of where my father grew up, and it's part of Leeds, which is the main city in Yorkshire. But it was a very quaint little town, and the people there were very, very accommodating. I mean, we could just run around the whole town and have a really good time with that, I guess. There was no hassles. I live in Los Angeles, and shooting a movie in Los Angeles is really difficult, and you compare that to shooting in the north of England. It was so easy. Then we went across to Whitby, which was a town I discovered many, many years ago. I think in about 92, 93, this old vampire town It's actually where Dracula was shipwrecked in the original Dracula novel. So it's got this whole spooky sort of feel to it, with these old churches and graveyards, and it's a seaside, creepy sort of place, but it's just so beautiful. And I mean, it's one of those places I would just love to live if I had the chance. And so we shot a little bit in Whitby as well, because it just, I guess, just brought out some of the texture of the script as well. You know, try to give it some sort of real world flavor. All around, just such a magical experience. And we went back to Morley, and there was this old church that had burnt down for, you know, mysterious reasons. Apparently they wanted to build some apartments there, and they weren't allowed to. Next minute the church burnt down, so maybe now there's apartments on this church land. But it was a beautiful old church that I'd visited many times, and my aunt and uncle had actually been married in this church. And then it was burnt down. It was a whole messy looking place, and it was so beautiful. And I guess we made the choice to shoot there without permission, because we couldn't figure out who actually owned the place. It was all in big contention of, you know, why it burned down and who owned it. So we just went in there and started filming, and you know, it was just a great place to shoot the end of the movie. Of course, I remember the police turned up at one point because they thought people were doing drugs or something, or, you know, we were teenagers doing bad things, and we weren't. And we just told them we were doing a movie, and they said, "Oh, okay, no problem," and left us. If this was at Los Angeles, of course, we'd all be arrested. But because it was the north of England, people were just much more open to filmmakers and filming, especially in a place that was kind of dangerous, I guess. And that place was a little dangerous, but I was very happy that, you know, we were able to shoot there. And then after that, I rented a helicopter and shot some aerials around the moors, and actually that was Ilkley Moor we shot the aerials on, and also around Morley as well. You know, I've had a lot of experience as a DP in my life, so I was able to handle the camera and the helicopter, and it's kind of fun. I like running around in helicopters doing these types of things. And it just helped, you know, get a bit of a production value for the film. We got one of the crew to drive the car under the helicopter as we took off, and then we landed the helicopter, picked him up, and took him for a flight around the moors. So it was a really fun, quick movie to shoot. I think it was shot in a total of about 15, 16 days. And I didn't have a DP. I didn't want a DP. I wanted to shoot this myself, just for, you know, just to give it a different vibe, you know, because I knew what I wanted. I wanted the movie to be done quickly and to be done efficiently, and I think it was. I'm happy with some of the shots I got in the movie. You know, it was definitely a very enjoyable experience all around, and it's just nice that you can just grab a camera sometimes and go and shoot a film and with your friends and have a really good time. So Death Machine will be always one of my personal favorite movies. I think it's currently my favorite film. It really was a personal movie for me, because it goes back to my roots as somebody from Yorkshire, and I guess my father is from there, and you know, we have so much history in that area. So I wanted to bring that area out, and I wanted to show the world what a magical place it is. And as I said, it was born out of one of the most painful moments of my life, and yet it became one of the most joyous adventures I'd ever had. So I'm always going to be very fond of Death Machine, because it's a movie that I guess just means a lot, and will always be bittersweet whenever I watch it. I hope people see the movie for what it is. It's not just something made to make money. It's a movie that was made out of a love of science and time travel. It was made out of personal pain and a love for characters and people, and how they relate and how we grow and develop as humans. And I'm very thankful for all the good people that helped me to make that movie, and I'm looking forward to doing more time travel movies in the future.